Hello, we are from Group 4, consisting of Anissa Gina, Ayu Widya Lazwardi, Muhammad Yusra, Tama Irawan, and Wahyu Oktarizaldi. Today we'll be presenting about family-related problems. And the first slide will be the definition of family, presented by Wahyu Oktarizaldi. Okay, next slide.
Okay, so the first one I want to talk about definition of family. According to Kendall 2012, families is a relationships in which people live together with commitment, form an economic unit, and care for any young and consider the group critical to their identity. Meanwhile, according to Sullivan, the family is a social institution based on kinship that functions to replace members of society and to nurture them. There are four types of family: extended family, nuclear family, egalitarian family, and modified extended family. First one is extended family. Extended family is a family unit composed of relatives in addition to parents and children, all of whom live in the same household or in close proximity. Extended families that typically include grandparents, uncles, aunts, and or other relatives in addition to parents and children. The second one is nuclear family. Nuclear family is a family unit composed of one or two parents and their dependent children that lives apart from the other relatives. The nuclear family in an industrialized society functions primarily to regulate sexual activity, socialize children, and provide family members with affection and companionship. The third one is egalitarian family. Egalitarian family is a family in which power and authority are shared somewhat equally by husband and wife, although male dominance may persist in some families. And the last one is modified extended family. Modified extended family is a family in which elaborate networks of visitation and support are found even though each nuclear unit lives separately. Next one, we talk about diversity in intimate relationships and families. Diversity in intimate relationships and families in the US has come about because of dramatic increases in the first, singlehood, 2, postponing marriage, 3, living together without marriage, like cohabitation and domestic partnerships, 4th, dual earner marriages, and the 5th is one-parent families or single-parent families. Singlehood. There are about 74 million adults, consists of 40.2 million men and 34 million women in the US who have never been married. Some people choose singlehood over marriage because it means greater freedom from commitments to another person. Others choose it because of more career opportunities, the availability of sexual partners without marriage, the belief that the single lifestyle is full of excitement, and the desire for self-sufficiency and freedom to change and experiment. Among males aged 15 and over, about 47% of African Americans have never been married, compared to about 38.7% of Latinos and 26.1% of whites. Among women aged 15 and over, about 45.5% of African Americans have never married, compared to 33.7% of Latinas and 22.7% of whites, according to U.S. Census Bureau 2010. Postponing marriage. Young people today are less eager to get married than they were 2 decades ago. Many are remaining single into their late 20s. Sociologists suggest 4 key factors. The first, economic uncertainty. Second, women's increasing participation in the labor force. Third, sexual relationships outside marriage having become more socially acceptable and contraception having become more effective. And fourth, as a result of rising divorce rates, less eagerness to get married and thus risk getting divorced. Cohabitation, domestic relationship, and same-sex marriage. Cohabitation is two adults living together in a sexual relationship without being legally married. It is not known how many people actually cohabit because the U.S. Census Bureau refers to couples who live together simply as unmarried couple households. Gay and lesbian couples not living in states where same-sex marriage is legal, cohabitation or domestic partnerships have been the only choices in many years, because laws in most states have not allowed same-sex couples to marry legally. They have established domestic partnerships. Domestic partnerships are household partnerships in which unmarried couples live together in a committed, sexually intimate relationship and is granted the same rights and benefits as those accorded to married heterosexual couples. Dual earners marriage. Marriages in which both spouses are in the labor force. There are about 57% of all marriages in the US. A central problem facing couples in dual earner marriages is how to have sufficient time for both family and work. By the end of the workday, some people are too tired to spend much time with family members. According to some research, family life has changed significantly in terms of the work-family balancing that women and men do. For example, men's absolute and proportionate contributions to household tasks have been increased substantially over the past 3 decades. Child care has been the area of family life in which men's contribution has increased most significantly. Some studies show that men have tripled the amount of time they spend in child care, and researchers believe that men's involvement in family work will continue to grow rather than stall, as some originally predicted. Comparing two-parent and single-parent family. When the mother and father in a two-parent household truly share parenting, children have the benefit of two primary caregivers. Some researchers have found that when fathers take an active part in raising the children, the effect is beneficial for our family members. However, living in a two-parent family does not guarantee children a happy childhood. Children whose parents argue constantly, are alcoholics, or abuse them have a worse family experience than do children in a single-parent family where there is a supportive environment.
Children-related issues. There are so many problems related to children, but today we only discuss about 3 of them. First is reproductive freedom, second is contraception, and third is abortion. Reproductive freedom. Reproductive freedom has been a controversial issue throughout much of U.S. history. In the 19th century, the government instituted formal legal policies to ensure that some people would not produce children by incarcerating wayward girls and limiting their right to marry and by passing laws that permitted the sterilization of individuals who were poor, criminal, and feeble-minded. Political leaders attempt to prevent people who were thought to be unfit from reproducing. Today, according from some researchers, the government discouraged birth among the poor by mandating the coverage of contraceptive for women and Medicaid. And then contraception. Contraception devices such as condoms and diaphragms were widely available and relatively technologically sophisticated in the first half of the 19th century. By the 1850s, however, the government had begun to establish policies limiting their availability to prevent a drop in the birth rate among white Americans. Abortion. Abortion became illegal in most states by 1900. Science, among others, had begun to crusade against abortion in the 1800s because most procedures were done by people such as barbers who had no medical training. Some Science apparently believe that if this abortionist could be stopped, Science would become the arbiters of whether or not women should have abortion. However, the ban on abortion and the limited availability of contraceptive didn't prevent wealthy women from practicing birth control or procuring an abortion.
Domestic violence is a violence or abuse in domestic settings such as in marriage or cohabitation. There are two kinds of domestic violence, which are child maltreatment and intimate partner violence. The first one, child maltreatment, it's a phenomenon which negligent treatment occurs to a child under the age of 18 by a person who is responsible for the child's welfare. When hearing child abuse, Most people would think that what is happening is a physical or sexual abuse. However, the most frequent child abuse is child neglect, as in not meeting a child's basic need for emotional warmth and security, adequate shelter, food, healthcare, education, clothing, and protection. Child abuse is largely hidden all around the world, unless an incident that results in a death or a serious injury blown up on the media. Each year, approximately 3 million are being abused or neglected in the United States. Child maltreatment causes suffering to children and families, and most of it have long-term consequences, such as crippling depression, high-risk sexual behaviors, and unintended pregnancy. The second one is the intimate partnered violence. It is a phenomenon of domestic violence by a current or former partner in an intimate relationship. Any behavior within an intimate relationship that results in physical, psychological, or sexual harm, such as physical aggression, sexual coercion, psychological abuse, and controlling behavior, can be considered as an intimate partner violence. Divorce and remarriage. Divorce is a legal process of dissolving a marriage that allows former spouses to remarry. Divorce laws vary all around the world, but in most countries, divorce requires the sanction of a court, which involves issues of distribution of property, child custody, alimony or spousal support, child visitation access, parenting time, child support, and division of debt. According to Wolfinger, children of divorced parents are 40% more likely to divorce than children of married parents. This might result from the mindset that a broken marriage can be replaced rather than repaired. Divorce and remarriage would likely to create a complex family relationship. Blended families that consist of a husband and wife, children from previous marriages, and children from the new marriage. Stress in this kind of family could be high since rivalry among the children and hostilities are directed towards the step-parents or step-siblings. Children's ability to deal with divorce may depend on their age. School-age children may understand the separation, but not old enough to understand the reasoning behind it. Older teenagers are more likely to recognize the conflict that leads to the separation. They may still feel the fear, loneliness, and pressure to choose sides. Infants and preschool-age children may suffer the heaviest since they lose their routine that the marriage offered.
Hello, my name is Anissa Gina Salsabila, and I'm going to explain about the difficult concept for us to understand. So, we feel difficult to understand about the difference between cohabitation and domestic partnership. According to the book of Diana Kendall, the definition of cohabitation is two adults living together in a sexual relationship without being legally married. And the definition of domestic partnership is household partnerships in which an unmarried couple lives together in a committed, sexually intimate relationship and is granted the same rights and benefits as those married heterosexual couples. So what's the difference? If we look from the definition of the domestic partnership, it is stated that as those married heterosexual couples. It leads us to the concept of the couples in the domestic partnership is the same-sex couple. The next different thing is, it is also stated in the definition in domestic partnership that the couples in the domestic partnership is in a committed relationship. Meanwhile, in the cohabitation, it is not stated. The next different thing is the unmarried couple in the cohabitation is not married. Either they are not married yet or they don't want to marry. But the reason the unmarried couple in the domestic partnership not married is because they are live in a state where the laws do not legalize the same-sex marriage. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay. Abortion, a community-based survey done in 10 major cities and 6 districts in year 2000, conducted by Pusat Penelitian Kesehatan University of Indonesia, reveals that there are approximately 2 million abortions in Indonesia. So it is estimated that there are 37 abortions for every 1,000 pregnant women in Indonesia. And surprisingly, only 38% of women reported using the safe procedure. The other 25% using oral medication and massage, 13% injected themselves with medical substance, other 13% inserting unknown object to their vagina, other 8% using paranormal practice, and the last 4% using acupuncture. This still happen because the lack of education in Indonesia. Okay, domestic violence. There are 3,419 domestic violence cases reported to Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection between 1 January to 6 November 2020. Even though it is high, the real number of cases in Indonesia is expected to be far higher than what it is reported, because most Indonesians still think that domestic violence is a personal problem and not something that other people should know. The result of this condition is there are many victims of domestic violence, and surprisingly, the data shows that mostly the perpetrator is the victim's closest ones. Okay, next slide. Divorce. The number of cases in Indonesia is keep increasing throughout the year. Based on the data from Direktorat Badan Peradilan Agama (Badilak) in 2017, most common cause of divorce in Indonesia is domestic quarrels, finance, unreturned decisions, and domestic violence, and others, as you can see in the slide. Okay, that's all from me. Okay, next slide.
There are three perspectives to family-related problems: functionalist, conflict, and symbolic interactionist. Functionalists view change in social institution, economy, religion, education, law, medicine, and the government will affect family-related problems. For example, the no-fault divorce law is increasing the number of divorcee and single-parent family. Their solution to this problem is emphasize keeping families together and reducing ills, domestic violence, abortion, and divorce. Because divorce will affect other social problems, so it's better to reinforce families. Conflict views family problem comes from inequality, not only from the family but also the other social institution. Focuses in social class and power that affected marriage and family. For example, domestic violence is a weapon for men to control women and perpetuate gender inequality to hold their patriarchy. Their solution to this to reducing family problems from doing something to the roots of oppression, such as law. Law must be strengthened to pursue individuals who take advantage or harm from their marital ties. And then the third, symbolic interactionist perspective. They view family communication process is fundamental in understanding roles in family. Family members act by how the other members react. Partners' expectation will eventually lead to marital dissatisfaction and worse divorce. For example, the differences on how husband and wife see their marriages. Sometimes husbands see their marriage as something happy, like so much happiness, but wife sometimes see it as less happiness. And another example is women express their love by showing it, by saying it, but men expresses their love silently. They do it with action, sometimes helping the woman do chores or something, and then fixing stuff in the house. They count it as love in that part. Their solution to this is family problems can be reduced through better communication between family members, dealing with unrealistic expectation about marriage and family life. Sometimes partners come up with unrealistic expectation to the other partners. Why didn't he do that? Why didn't she think I'm doing enough? Sometimes it comes with questions like, do I do enough to the girls? Do I do enough to my family? So they deals with communication to improve the family ties. And this is our perspective to the cases of divorce. We choose functionalists as our perspective to divorce because functionalists view divorce from macro point of view. They view it as a whole aspect because divorce affected so much in social stability that if there is an increase in divorces, it will also increasing social problem. Family cohesiveness and uniformity play a role in creating good marriage, or the negative part is divorce. Supporting traditional and historical family norms to reduce divorce rate. Social institution is responsible to a failure of in providing adequate instruction and social standard to marriage partners. So that's why divorces happens because of the lack of cohesiveness and uniformity, and then also the lack of providing from the institution, social institution.